Right, so it seems the market has rejected the 14 Plus and demand has been much lower than expected, and so as a result they're already cutting production for this, and so let's delve into why this is the case. CS, pretty credible source, the information tells us Apple's asked many suppliers to halt iPhone 14 production and also reduce component modules for this by 70 to 90%. Now do remember the 14 Plus launched a little later, so it's only been 2 weeks or so since the release, and Apple's already cutting production for this and re-evaluating the demand for the product. And to be honest, I'm low-key surprised Apple thought there was going to be that much demand for this, and let me explain why I think this makes sense and why the market's rejected it. So the first big issue is the pricing for this, and I'll get to pricing outside of the US because that's a mess, but focusing on the US first, even within the US the prices do not make sense. So of course in the past there's been a $200 to $300 jump between the regular models and the Pro models, and that's enough for most consumers to justify just getting the regular models and not getting the Pros. However, unlike the Mini, the Plus is a bigger 14, so of course the 14 staying at $799 meant the Plus was now $899. And that's with the carrier, of course. If you get it unlocked, it's $929, and well, that's way too close to the pricing of the Pro models. Because yes, unlike we were expecting, the Pros in the US are exactly the same price, and so paying a little more now gets you the regular 14 Pro, which yes, I know has a smaller screen but has better cameras, an always-on display, a better build, and a faster chip. So yeah, basically the Plus was too expensive, it should have been $100 less. And outside of the US, it's a completely different story because many currencies around the world have weakened, and so as a result, Apple's massively increased the prices of all their new products. And so here in the UK where I'm based, the 14 Plus is the same price as last year's 13 Pro. So of course, to consumers that's going to seem like a bad deal because you're getting a regular iPhone for the price of last year's Pro model that of course had 120Hz, triple cameras, and a better build. CS pricing was the crucial mistake Apple made with this, and I'm praying that with the 14 Plus, which by the way the information says is still in the works, does come with a lower price. But that's not the only issue because number 2 we come to the fact the Plus and the regular 14 did not get major upgrades. So yes, Apple clearly focused on the Pro models this year and gave them all the new features, and the regular models did not really get much, and even the chips inside are from last year's models. Now yes, I know some may say this was Apple's plan because upselling you to the Pro models and getting you to spend more cash is going to benefit Apple, so maybe they made the regular models worse on purpose to justify getting the Pros instead. And yeah, that could be valid, but of course, the fact Apple's cutting production for this clearly does suggest Apple still was expecting this to do pretty well. And so yes, while Apple does benefit from this, the Pro models being too good does affect sales of the Plus. Now my next reason is the fact you can still get the 13 Pro Max. Now yes, I know this has always been the case for the regular models, you can go for that or last year's Pro models, but I would say that every year the regular models have offered just enough to justify getting them instead. For example, the 13 last year did have battery upgrades, smaller notch, better chip, and the camera upgrades were substantial enough to justify getting this over the 12 Pro, but of course, this year, because the regular models were basically the same for the most part, you could just get the 13 Pro Max and get the same chip, get the same cameras. Also, they look near identical on the front and you do actually get 120Hz on the Pro Max. And yeah, overall, the 13 Pro Max is the better buy. And what's worse for the 14 series is that because the prices got so expensive outside of the US, the 13 Pro Max can be found for much less through third parties, and so yeah, it's a no-brainer to get that instead. Now finally, let's talk about the competition. Now this isn't as big of a factor as the other reasons because ultimately many just prefer iOS, and so they're not willing to go to Androids, but either way there is some tough competition in the Android world. Namely the Pixel 7 Pro, because that's the same price as the 14 Plus, and that is Google's flagship device, so you get triple cameras, you do get a periscope lens the iPhone Pros don't even have, you have 120Hz, the Google Smarts with the Tensor G2 chip, And yeah, overall this is a much better buy. And even in the Samsung camp, you do have the S22 Plus, again a big sized upper mid-range handset that has triple cameras, 120Hz, and again a better buy. Now again, I know there are some who care about the iOS features, like iMessage for example, but of course, many people outside of the US actually don't use iMessage. I, for example, use WhatsApp because a lot of my friends here use Androids, and so for many people outside of the US, they will consider Android phones, and so the 14 Plus had to offer more for the price. Because yes, if a regular consumer does get the 14 Plus, I'm sure they're gonna like it. It's just the fact you can get better value with the Pro models, or last year's iPhone models, or even Android rivals. And it's a real shame because this, on paper, sounds like a recipe for success because many like cheap big phones because they do use their phones for nearly all their computing needs, and so having a big display and a big battery at a lower price could have been a big success. But Apple made some errors, and as a result, I don't see the 14 Plus being a big success, and honestly, I'd rather have the Mini instead. Now yes, I know the Mini also wasn't that great in terms of sales, but at least it was offering a new size that you could not get with the Pro models, and there is a small niche audience for mini iPhones. It's either that or of course, Apple just goes back to offering one regular iPhone because that formula works with the 11 and the 10R, so of course, simplifying the range could make sense. I will say though, there is a very small chance the 14 Plus does pick up because ultimately the consumers buying this are those who are not buying at launch. They're going to the Apple Store a few months after launch and just getting one of the regular models. And so yeah, maybe the 14 Plus does do better later, like of course the 10R and the SE3 did. Since much like the 10R, the 14 Plus also did have a delayed release, and that again might be a reason why the sales aren't great, since many consumers aren't patient and just want the iPhones immediately, so I can see those who are thinking of getting the 14 Plus just got the Pro Max instead. But guys, tell me your thoughts. Why do you think the 14 Plus is not selling that great? Anyways, thank you for watching guys. Make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video in the corner above on details regarding the iPhone 15 series. And on that note, see ya peeps.